In the heart of Louisville, Kentucky, a city known for its rich history and vibrant culture, lived a young woman whose life was brimming with promise. Breonna Taylor, born on June 5, 1993, in Grand Rapids, Michigan, was more than just a name that would later echo in protests and headlines. She was a daughter, a friend, and a dedicated professional. Raised by her mother, Tamika Palmer, Breonna's family relocated to Louisville during her childhood, where she would plant deep roots and envision a future dedicated to helping others. Breonna's early years were marked by a zest for life and an innate curiosity. She began walking at just 9 months old, a testament to her eagerness to explore the world around her. By the age of 7, she had her first computer, showcasing an early affinity for learning and technology. Music played a significant role in her life, with Breonna often immersing herself in melodies that resonated with her spirit. After graduating from Western High School in Louisville in 2011, Breonna briefly attended the University of Kentucky. However, her true calling emerged in the medical field. She became an emergency medical technician, EMT, a role that allowed her to combine her compassion with her desire to make a tangible difference in her community. Colleagues and patients alike remembered her for her dedication, warmth, and unwavering commitment to those in need. Outside of her professional life, Breonna was a beacon of joy to those who knew her. Friends described her as a person who could light up any room, always ready with a smile or a kind word. She had aspirations that extended beyond her current role. Breonna was studying to become a nurse, aiming to further her impact on the healthcare system and provide even more comprehensive care to her patients. However, the narrative of Breonna's life took a tragic turn on the night of March 13, 2020. As she lay asleep in her apartment with her boyfriend, Kenneth Walker, their sanctuary was abruptly invaded. Officers from the Louisville Metro Police Department executed a late-night raid, shattering the peace of their home. The details of that night are harrowing and have been the subject of intense scrutiny and debate. This incident did not occur in isolation. It became a flashpoint in a nation already grappling with issues of racial injustice and police brutality. The death of a young black woman, in the supposed safety of her own home, ignited a firestorm of protests and demands for accountability. But beyond the headlines and the chants, one must ask, who was Breonna Taylor? What dreams were extinguished that night? And how did a dedicated EMT, with aspirations of advancing her medical career, become a symbol of systemic failure? As we delve deeper into this story, it's essential to remember the human behind the hashtag. Breonna's life was multifaceted, filled with love, ambition, and a commitment to bettering her community. Her untimely death serves as a stark reminder of the fragility of life and the pressing need for systemic change. How many more lives will be cut short before meaningful reform is achieved? And what does justice look like for Breonna Taylor and countless others who have met similar fates? In the chapters that follow, we will explore the events of that fateful night, the ensuing public outcry, the legal battles, and the lasting impact of Breonna Taylor's life and death. But as we embark on this journey, let us hold space for the woman at the center of it all, a woman whose life, though tragically shortened, continues to inspire a movement. In the early hours of March 13, 2020, the city of Louisville, Kentucky, became the epicenter of a tragedy that would reverberate across the United States. Breonna Taylor, a 26-year-old emergency medical technician, lay asleep in her apartment at 3003 Springfield Drive. Unbeknownst to her, a series of decisions and actions were unfolding that would culminate in her untimely death. The operation, the Louisville Metro Police Department, LMPD, had been conducting a narcotics investigation centered on Jamarcus Glover, a former boyfriend of Taylor's. Suspecting Glover of drug trafficking, detectives sought search warrants for multiple locations, including Taylor's residence. The affidavit supporting the warrant claimed that Glover had been receiving packages at Taylor's apartment and that she was involved in managing funds related to his alleged drug operations. However, these assertions were later called into question, with critics arguing that the evidence was circumstantial at best. A no-knock warrant was obtained for Taylor's apartment, permitting officers to enter without prior notification. Such warrants are typically reserved for situations where announcing presence might lead to the destruction of evidence or pose a significant threat to officer safety. Yet, in this instance, the necessity of a no-knock entry was debatable, especially considering Taylor's lack of a criminal record and her standing as an EMT. If you don't subscribe to this channel, then maybe injustice doesn't bother you. Maybe silence in the face of wrongdoing is comfortable. But if you believe stories like Breonna Taylor's deserve to be told, if you believe the truth should never be buried, then hit that subscribe button. Because looking away means letting injustice win. The raid. Shortly after midnight, LMPD officers, including Sergeant Jonathan Mattingly, Detective Miles Cosgrove, and Detective Brett Hankison, approached Taylor's apartment. While the warrant authorized a no-knock entry, the officers later claimed they chose to knock and announce themselves. This assertion became a focal point of controversy, as multiple neighbors testified that they did not hear any announcement, and Taylor's boyfriend, Kenneth Walker, maintained that he believed intruders were breaking in. Upon receiving no response after their alleged announcement, the officers used a battering ram to force open the door. Startled awake, Walker, a licensed firearm owner, retrieved his handgun, fearing for their safety. As the door burst open, Walker fired a single shot, striking Sergeant Mattingly in the leg. This act, driven by a perceived need for self-defense, set off a chain reaction. These questions demand thorough examination and have fueled ongoing debates about law enforcement practices, accountability, and the sanctity of human life. The tragic death of Breonna Taylor on March 13, 2020, in Louisville, Kentucky, ignited a wave of public outrage that transcended local boundaries, resonating deeply across the United States and beyond. This chapter delves into the multifaceted reactions that followed, highlighting the protests, statements from public figures, and the pivotal role of social media in amplifying the case. National and local reactions. In the immediate aftermath of Taylor's death, Louisville became a focal point for demonstrations demanding justice. Protesters gathered in Jefferson Square Park, which soon earned the moniker Injustice Square, to honor Taylor's memory and call for accountability. Chants of "Say Her Name" reverberated through the streets, a poignant reminder of the life lost and a demand against the erasure of Black women's experiences in discussions about police violence. The local protests in Kentucky quickly gained national traction. Cities across the country, from New York to Los Angeles, witnessed mass gatherings, with participants holding placards bearing Taylor's image and messages such as "Justice for Breonna." These demonstrations were not isolated events, but part of a broader movement challenging systemic racism and police brutality. Statements from public figures. The gravity of Taylor's death prompted numerous public figures to voice their concerns and demand justice. Celebrities, athletes, and politicians utilized their platforms to shed light on the case. For instance, NBA star LeBron James wore apparel bearing Taylor's name during games, emphasizing the need for accountability. Musician Beyoncé penned an open letter to Kentucky's Attorney General, urging swift action and transparency in the investigation. These endorsements from influential figures played a crucial role in maintaining momentum for the movement, ensuring that Taylor's name remained prominent in public discourse. However, they also sparked debates about the role of celebrities in activism. Some critics questioned whether these gestures were genuine acts of solidarity or performative displays lacking substantive impact. This raises a pertinent question. Do celebrity endorsements and social justice movements contribute to meaningful change, or do they risk overshadowing grassroots efforts? The role of social media in the digital age. Social media platforms have become powerful tools for mobilization and awareness. The hashtag Justice for Breonna Taylor trended across platforms like Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, serving both as a rallying cry and a means to disseminate information about the case. Users shared petitions, fundraising campaigns, and updates on legal proceedings, creating a decentralized yet cohesive movement online. However, the digital amplification of Taylor's case also highlighted the complexities of online activism. While social media facilitated rapid information sharing, it also led to the spread of misinformation and performative activism. Some users were criticized for engaging in #activism without contributing to tangible change, prompting discussions about the efficacy and ethics of online engagement. This brings forth another controversial question. Does social media activism lead to substantive societal change, or does it risk reducing complex issues to fleeting trends? Controversial questions. The public outcry following Breonna Taylor's death underscores several contentious issues: systemic racism in policing, To what extent does systemic racism influence law enforcement practices, and how can institutions be reformed to address these biases? Accountability mechanisms. Are current mechanisms sufficient to hold law enforcement officers accountable for misconduct, or do they inherently protect those in power? Role of public figures in activism. Do endorsements from celebrities and public figures enhance the effectiveness of social justice movements, or do they risk diluting the message? Efficacy of social media activism. Can online movements translate into real-world change, or do they risk becoming performative gestures lacking depth? Breonna Taylor's story is a reminder of why we must keep questioning, keep learning, and keep demanding justice. If you want more in-depth true crime stories that uncover the facts, the controversies, and the impact they leave behind, make sure to subscribe to this channel. Turn on notifications so you never miss an episode. Let's keep these conversations alive, because stories like this need to be told. In the aftermath of Breonna Taylor's tragic death in Louisville, Kentucky, the quest for justice navigated a labyrinth of legal proceedings, igniting debates that reverberated across the nation. The legal journey was fraught with complexities, raising pressing questions about accountability and the very fabric of the justice system. Initial investigations and grand jury proceedings following the fatal raid on March 13, 2020, the officers involved were placed under investigation. The case was presented to a grand jury, a process that would later become a focal point of contention. In September 2020, the grand jury indicted former officer Brett Hankison, not for Taylor's death, but on 3 counts of wanton endangerment for firing into a neighboring apartment. The other officers involved faced no charges related to Taylor's death. This decision sparked widespread outrage. Critics argued that the grand jury proceedings lacked transparency and favored law enforcement. The NAACP Legal Defense and Educational Fund highlighted concerns, stating that the Kentucky Attorney General's office presented a biased view of the case that favored law enforcement. Federal charges and plea agreements. The pursuit of justice extended beyond state courts. In August 2022, the U.S. Department of Justice indicted 3 officers, Kelly Goodlett, Joshua Janes, and Kyle Meany, on charges of conspiracy, obstruction of justice, and civil rights violations. The indictment alleged that they conspired to mislead the judge who approved the search warrant for Taylor's apartment. Detective Brett Hankison was also charged with civil rights violations. In a significant development, Kelly Goodlett pleaded guilty to the charges in August 2022 and agreed to testify against her co-defendants. This plea marked a pivotal moment, shedding light on internal misconduct within the police department. Trials and verdicts. Brett Hankison's federal trial commenced in October 2023. After 3 weeks of testimony from approximately 24 witnesses, the jury was unable to reach a verdict, leading to a mistrial in November 2023. Federal prosecutors announced plans to retry Hankison, underscoring the case's complexity and the challenges inherent in prosecuting law enforcement officers. The retrial began in October 2024. On November 1, 2024, the federal jury found Hankison guilty of depriving Taylor of her rights, but acquitted him of charges related to her neighbors. His sentencing is scheduled for March 15, 2025, where he faces a potential life sentence. Civil settlements and police reforms. Parallel to the criminal proceedings, Breonna Taylor's family filed a wrongful death lawsuit against the city of Louisville. In 2020, the city agreed to a $12 million settlement, accompanied by a commitment to implement police reforms. In December 2024, Louisville entered a consent decree with the U.S. Department of Justice, agreeing to comprehensive reforms within its police department. The agreement mandates overhauls in training and policies, emphasizing de-escalation tactics and accountability measures. An independent monitor will oversee the implementation of these reforms, reflecting a concerted effort to rebuild trust between law enforcement and the community. Ongoing debates and reflections. The legal proceedings surrounding Breonna Taylor's death have ignited enduring debates about justice and accountability. The perceived leniency towards the officers involved has led to widespread criticism. The Harvard Civil Rights Civil Liberties Law Review argued that the prosecutorial discretion exercised in this case left the public feeling discouraged, outraged, and doubtful of the ability of government officials to deliver justice. These controversies have prompted calls for systemic reforms, including increased transparency in grand jury proceedings and the re-evaluation of prosecutorial practices in cases involving police misconduct. Police reforms in Louisville. In response to the public's demand for justice, the city of Louisville implemented several reforms aimed at addressing the issues highlighted by Taylor's death. One of the most notable changes was the banning of no-knock warrants by the Louisville Metro Council. This policy change was directly influenced by the circumstances surrounding Taylor's death, where officers executed a no-knock warrant, leading to the fatal encounter. Furthermore, the U.S. Department of Justice conducted an extensive investigation into the practices of the Louisville Metro Police Department. The investigation revealed a pattern of constitutional violations and discriminatory practices against Black residents. As a result, in December 2024, the city entered into a consent decree with the Justice Department, committing to comprehensive reforms. These reforms include overhauling training programs, revising use of force policies to emphasize de-escalation, and improving responses to public demonstrations. An independent monitor has been appointed to assess the city's compliance with these mandates. Legislative changes and national impact. Breonna Taylor's death also had a profound impact beyond Louisville. At the federal level, the Justice in Policing Act was introduced, aiming to address various aspects of law enforcement accountability. The act proposes measures such as banning chokeholds, limiting qualified immunity for officers, and enhancing data collection on police encounters. While the act has faced challenges in Congress, it signifies a growing recognition of the need for nationwide police reform. Additionally, Taylor's case amplified the #SayHerName campaign, which seeks to raise awareness about Black female victims of police violence. This movement has highlighted the often overlooked narratives of Black women affected by systemic racism and has called for their stories to be integral to discussions about police reform and racial justice. Ongoing challenges and the path forward. Despite these reforms and increased awareness, challenges persist. Systemic issues of racism and bias in policing are deeply entrenched, and meaningful change requires sustained effort. Experts emphasize the importance of community involvement, continuous evaluation of law enforcement practices, and a commitment to addressing implicit biases within the justice system. Breonna Taylor's legacy serves as a reminder of the urgent need for comprehensive reforms to ensure justice and equality. Her story has become a symbol of the broader movement against racial injustice, inspiring ongoing efforts to transform policing practices and address systemic inequities in the United States.